Welcome. We're so glad you're able to join us today for our next edition of the 49er Industry Chats. My name is Noemi Guevara, and I am the Director of Alumni Engagement at Cal State Long Beach. Before we start our awesome session today, I would like to let you know that this session is being recorded and will live on our website, so you can refer back to it on demand at csulb.edu/alumni. Also, we want to let you know the speaker will be taking questions. Please feel free to use the Q&A box at the bottom. And now I would like to introduce Alice LaViolette, a double grad of Cal State Long Beach from the classes of 1969 and 1980. And she was honored as a distinguished alumna in 2011 and currently serves on the CSULB Alumni Board and will serve as your moderator today. Alice?
Thanks, Noemi. Just to let you know, I'm a psychotherapist in Long Beach and in West LA, and do speaking and presentations and expert witness for the court. But today we are really honored to have Stephanie Davis with us. Stephanie has earned both her bachelor's degree and her master's degree in communicative disorders at Cal State Long Beach. She's credentialed in speech-language pathology. She also is a board-certified behavior analyst, and she's going to help us navigate the shifting roles of caregivers with telepractice, and she's going to be providing some tips and tricks for online platforms. Stephanie is currently a member of the Miller's Children's Hospital Outpatient Rehab Therapies team, and she will be willing to take questions during her presentation. She will also be showing slides during her presentation. So I'd like to welcome Stephanie. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure.
So the first thing I want to do is I just want to thank everyone for coming today. I know that you have a lot of choices regarding how you could be spending your time on this Wednesday afternoon. And I really appreciate you spending it here with me. If I am on speaker view on your screen, I just wanted to quickly talk about the things that you could be doing that you're not doing because you're here with me. So the first thing that you could be doing is you could be watching Tiny House Nation. That's what I might be doing if I wasn't here. But also you could be baking. Maybe you're a baker, or working out. Maybe you like to work out. There's three other things I think on my list here I thought of. A lot of you are graduate students or postgraduate students, so you could be reading research. That's what you do in your spare time, right? And then also maybe you'd rather be sleeping. But my favorite pastime is probably eating ice cream. That's a hobby, right? Are these just all my favorite things to do, or maybe you guys like to do them too? But I wanted to thank you. You're here today because you care about your career and your schooling, and I really appreciate the time you're spending with me. So Alice was right. I got my BA and my MA in communicative disorders from Cal State Long Beach. I'm currently employed at Miller Children's. I already told the panel that I feel so honored to be a part of their absolutely brilliant outpatient team. I'm so thankful to work in pediatrics and be surrounded by such brilliant colleagues with initiative. They're very proactive and we're very collaborative. If you hear nothing else, I hope that you walk away knowing that you need to have a collaborative team in order to be successful with the changing times. Previously, I was employed by ABC Unified School District. I saw the magic that a board certified behavior analyst / classroom teacher provided, and I wanted to have some of that magic. So I got my master's in special education and became a board certified behavior analyst, because the speech therapist and behavior analyst should be friends. They really should be friends. And if you have questions, I would love to answer your questions about that later. Previously, before all of the speech therapy that I did, I was a professional dancer for stage, film, and television. And interestingly, I have done all of the things I mentioned a lot longer than what I'm here to talk to you about as an expert. So telehealth is something I've only been doing for less than 3 months, but here I am, your expert in telehealth. I sort of wish you were asking me how to be a professional dancer instead of how to be a good teletherapist. But all in all, if I don't know the answers, I would like to lead and guide you to find them. And it's really important that when you don't know the answers, you know how to get them. Okay, so now I'm going to share my slides with you. Just a moment. Okay, so here's really the problem that telehealth can cause, is that caregivers aren't therapists. So here's me as a caregiver, not a therapist. I'm in my workout clothes because I would love to get in a workout, but I didn't. I'd like to maybe do my hair or something like that. I have my older child doing his schooling at the table, and then my younger child there pulling for my attention. So this is the reality of caregivers. No matter how old the patients are that I'm working with, they're being pulled in a lot of different directions. So they aren't therapists, and our job really as speech therapists during this time and in telehealth is to really bring caregivers in as friends and or allies rather, and to let them know how precious they are and how important they are in the therapy of our patients.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Before you go any further, we had a question. What is telehealth?
Oh, okay. So telehealth is what I've been doing now through Miller Children's Hospital. So our outpatients, they aren't coming into the clinic. We are in our homes or in the clinic in a separate room. And just like you and I are over a Zoom conference call right now, we are delivering therapy through Zoom. So we go through Zoom Health, so it's HIPAA compliant, and we are delivering the therapy that we used to do in person with our Play-Doh and such. We're delivering it in our own homes over video conferencing. So telehealth also goes telepractice, teletherapy. I'm going to use those all interchangeable today. I work in a healthcare setting, so I will more often call it telehealth.
Thank you.
Yes. So the truth is here that caregivers are trainable. I have never in my lifetime met a caregiver that wasn't a wee bit trainable. And it's really necessary that they know that they're a big part of the therapy process, and that you understand how great they are as a part of your team. I think when you're delivering therapy face-to-face, you can get around that. And sometimes you can allow the caregiver some respite time, and you feel like, oh, well, that's okay. You know, they need a break. But in reality, we only deliver therapy like about 50 minutes per week. And we really can't change a life in 50 minutes per week. But training a caregiver can change a life. So here's the problem with telehealth. It's new, so like yuck, right? New stuff. And then also it uses technology, so like ugh. And then also it requires the caregivers to take a really responsible role, and they're busy, and oh boy. So telehealth can be tricky. But here's the truth, telehealth saves time. So it saves family time by not having to get children in and out of car seats. I don't know if you're in the portion of your life where that's an everyday ordeal for you, but it can be an ordeal. You save family time by not having to travel or commute. We have had a lot of families at Miller that tell us they take 3 buses to get to and from us for a 50-minute segment session. So it saves a lot of time for that family. If something's forgotten, like, oh, I forgot to bring that to therapy, it's usually really easy to grab, just right next to you. And therapists can work with patients, and we can show caregivers what to do in the natural environment. This, I think, is my very favorite thing about telehealth. At first, I was very hesitant, but now I am so excited that I can train family members in the environment in which they'll be demonstrating the skill. I think that family members are more confident, and I think that patients are getting more practice in a wider variety of natural environments. So the truth is that caregivers can be motivated to do this, even though it feels like a big job. And one more job is not really what a caregiver is looking for right now. But here's the behavior analyst in me that can show you about motivation. So that's my personal slide there. Okay. So caregivers aren't trained and sometimes they aren't motivated. So what do we do? So the first thing I always do is I ask the caregiver when I'm starting a session about activities that the child or the patient, doesn't matter the age, prefers this week. It's important to know when you're working with adults, has anything changed? I know a lot of older adults that go to speech therapy and they are just sitting watching CNN all day, or they're sitting and watching Dr. Phil all day. It's important to know that. Children, as the weather warms up and it becomes summer, are doing a lot more water play sometimes. It's important to know that. It's important to also praise the parent for any newly reported progress. So I say parent, but really caregiver and parent, I'm using those interchangeably, even though they're probably not. But any new reported progress is a huge celebration. So sometimes I'm gonna shift my screen here. See, I'm gonna stop share. Stop share. And then Alice, can you see my Play-Doh bits down here?
I sure can. Yes.
So sometimes we'll say, what are 5 things that went well? And so this can be feedback for the patient, but also feedback for the caregiver. So, let's say something that went well is, been talking about a really young child here. He requested more for the first time. Bam, well done, well done. Okay, what's something else that went well this week? Well, I read him, 3 books this week. Bam, well done, well done. Why is that so satisfying, right? Watching Play-Doh get smashed. And then on and on and on as the caregiver tells you, bam, this is just some reinforcement for them. It's pretty silly, but it hasn't fallen flat quite yet. And then I have some pancakes, and if I'm working with kids, I'm usually like, oh, look at the background screen. Oh, look at these pancakes. And then I pretend to eat them, and they're engaged and the parents are engaged. Don't be afraid to be silly. Telehealth requires animation and silliness. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again, go back to my slides. So always ask about new activities. Alice, are you able to see the slides there?
Yes,
Okay, ask about new activities and praise any reported progress. So next, this is the part of speech therapy that we already know how to do. We're gonna model, AKA I'm gonna do my thing. So I'm just gonna do me. So I'm going to get that child I'm gonna model and all the new targets and in the natural environment and see what I can do. And it's easy to stop here because you can be really terrific entertainment for the patient and their family, but you haven't been extremely helpful yet until you have broken down the task and prompted to get that child right where they're at, where they're engaged and highly accurate. So this is where speech language pathologists, this is where you need the degree in order to get them right in the pocket of doing exactly what you want them to do. I'm gonna stop sharing the slides for just a moment and take you. Do you have a question, Alice?
Stephanie, one question. Is there ever an issue of language with the caregiver? Are there language barriers?
Yes, absolutely, all the time. And so we have the ability through Miller to also have an interpreter on the line. We use some interpreter services. We have 2 different options through Miller, and we will have them on the line and interpret in real time. It does slow the session down in that I'm not able to provide as much detail. But in all honesty, as a speech language pathologist, I believe I'm often providing more detail than is necessary. So it works well working through interpreters. I really have to be clear and concise and choose what I say. And I think everyone benefits.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen and take you to, these are Boom cards. So I'm gonna take you to Boom Learning. And here, this is I interviewed a couple of different speech language pathologists and read a lot of blogs, frankly, not research, but blogs. And people hands down said that Boom cards were their favorite. So this is boomlearning.com. And let's say I'm working on prepositions. I'm gonna want the child to repeat after me. So hat on potato, eyes on potato, and I can move these items. Can you see that, Alice?
Yes, it's very clear.
Okay. Glasses on potato, and then of course use the best speech therapy tool we have, which is sabotage. Mustache on potato, and the child's like, no, no, right? And they have to figure out how to communicate that the mustache doesn't go there. We're always being silly in speech therapy, and I tell you that it's one of the best tricks that I have, because children and patients always want to tell you when you're wrong. So it's easy for us to be wrong, and then they have to figure out how to tell us that we are wrong. And it's also very fun. Okay, I'm switching my share again here. Let's see, stop share, going back to slides. Alice, can you see the slides?
Slides, great.
Wonderful. Okay, so you're going to prompt until the child is engaged and highly accurate. How you're going to get there is something like the Mr. Potato Head. It's going to be something interactive. It's going to be Play-Doh. It's going to be a puzzle. Maybe the parent has something at home, and the parent will feed them one puzzle piece at a time as you get them to say whatever your target is, or do the target skill. And that's going to help you have a highly engaged and a highly accurate patient. And you could easily stop here and you could pat yourself on the back, but that won't do you any good for generalization. So if you keep going, you're going to watch the caregiver for a positive reaction. So generally what happens here is that you have a child that's highly engaged, or a patient that's highly engaged, highly accurate, and demonstrating new skills. And so the caregiver is usually like, whoa, I haven't seen them do that before. And because we're a trained speech therapist, hopefully you do have them right in the pocket where they're doing something that's slightly brand new that they've never done before, but they're able to continue doing it with the motivation that you've created and the activity. And then you start to teach the patient how to do that, so the caregiver. So you talk about what the child is doing, or how or why. For example, let's say you are working on getting lip closure for an M in the final position. So things like arm, eam. So that's what you've been working on, and you have the patient, any age, depending on their disorder, you have the patient repeating you. Then you can do, you can provide an example that you think maybe the patient won't be able to get, and maybe the M in the initial position, and you can say Mao. And they don't get that one right. And so then you can say to the caregiver, it's really important when you're practicing at home that that M is in the final position instead of in the first position. And so it's really important, I'm in a board certified behavior analyst view here. It's important that you provide examples and you demonstrate how the patient can be accurate. And then you provide non-examples and demonstrate why the patient wouldn't be accurate and why that wouldn't be a good target to work on this week.
Stephanie,
yes.
you have another question. How long generally, I know you said 50 minutes is your general time. How long can you go longer than that? Or how long do you normally go in a session?
So currently I'm working in a medical outpatient setting. And so currently we generally work in 50-minute sessions. So I wouldn't go any further. And if I am pacing the session well, 50 minutes in my experience seems to be just about right in order to provide the modeling for the caregiver to do a variety of activities and then to train the caregiver. And generally, I'm asking that patient to work, just above their average level. And so they're tired generally at 50 minutes. So that works well for me. When I worked in the school system, I did 25-minute sessions, and those were groups. And those seem to work well also for the setting because we were taking the children outside of their general education class and wouldn't have wanted to take them out or pull them out any longer than 25 minutes. And I got very efficient at working in a group manner for 25 minutes. So I saw those children often twice a week. So altogether they were getting 50 minutes a week, which seemed to be about well for me. And if I needed more, then I did prescribe more if I thought that was necessary.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie.
You're welcome. So the last thing I do is I prescribe homework. Now I'm not prescribing a true prescription, I'm not a doctor, but it tends to work if I use very simple and clear language okay, your homework is to practice OM, EAM, ARM, and I want you to practice that 2 times in this next week and 3 times each. And so I'll give just a very strict prescription. Usually you'll see the parents with pen and pencil writing it down, or the caregivers if it's a husband-wife team. And I just want to be honest that less is more. So 1 is more than 0. So if last week, after last session, there was no homework that was done, it's important that you say, just do it once and have that one time be tomorrow. Just make it as close to your session as possible. That's the best chance behaviorally for them to be motivated and for it to work out. And the reason why you're doing this, you're going to prescribe homework that they can definitely do. Nothing that the patient's going to fail on, because as they practice at home and succeed, it's going to make the caregiver happy. The patient's going to see the caregiver happy, and both are going to be very happy with each other's performance. And I have seen relationships get better and better just based on giving homework that's very achievable for the patient and that the caregiver feels really comfortable implementing, and I've seen relationships flourish.
Stephanie, I have another question.
Okay.
What classes or what generic field is best to go into your specialty? What classes did you take that best prepared you, and what specific field or majors would be best to move into your specialty?
Okay, I can speak from my experience, which is that I transferred from a community college in my undergrad, and I knew which classes to take to be a communicative disorders major. So at the time it was called communicative disorders. I believe now at Cal State Long Beach, it's called speech language pathology. And it is best if you can just take those classes. But a lot of my colleagues in school had an undergrad, maybe it could be in anything really. Some of them were in linguistics, some in anthropology, and then they spoke with the department and they checked the classes and spoke to counselors and made sure to take the classes that it's called post-bac, so after their bachelor's but before their master's degree. And they were able to take all of those classes and to kind of catch up. So it's best if you can catch it as early as possible. If you know you want to be a speech language pathologist, and take all of the classes and only those classes. But there are other ways to go about it. So for me as a board certified behavior analyst, I decided to get certified in the 6 years that they did not accept a master's degree in speech language pathology. So I, in order to get that certification, needed a master's degree that said education, psychology, or behavior analysis. And so that's why I got my master's in special education. So you want to check with what college you want to take from and see what courses are needed.
And do you need a master's degree to be a speech pathologist?
You need a master's degree to be a speech language pathologist. And you can, with a bachelor's degree, be a speech language pathology assistant. And that allows you to work under speech language pathologists, and you implement therapy. There's many things that you can do. You just can't fully work on your own, I believe, or you always need to work under a speech language pathologist.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is the last bit of my prepared speech here, is that sometimes we run into the problem that caregivers aren't trained or motivated. And I think as a professional, it's best if you realize early on that they're your best allies. And I know I keep saying that, but I want to make sure that you hear that and you recognize the risk that they're taking. Every time they show up to your session, every time they log in through telehealth, you know, they are in charge of their child's safety. They're in charge of partly of their child's engagement or their husband or spouse's engagement. And they're taking a risk just meeting up with you, and to praise them and recognize them for that. Never criticize. If I might just kind of say that as an overall person, just never criticize. That's straight out of Dale Carnegie's How to Win and Influence Friends, People. And never criticize. Just don't do it. They won't risk with you. They will hide from you. And that's exactly what you do not need in an ally. I might say that about if you're in college also with colleagues. Just don't criticize. And then positive praise. So you're going to say 9 positive things to 1 critical thing. I'm going to be honest, just don't say that critical thing. Just say the 9 positive things and don't say that critical thing. That will treat you well in all of your relationships. I'm behavior analyzing you here. But lastly, at the end of the session, I always thank the caregiver for their commitment, and I'm very specific about the positive praise. Positive things that happen through the session or throughout the week. And I say, this is because of your commitment to your child. I can't change a life in 50 minutes, but with your help, we both can. So it's all about being positive. It's all about collaborating with them and truly getting to know them. So that's about the end of my presentation, but I would love to take questions and answers.
Well, you've got one question, which is what outside organizations are best to do networking with in your profession?
These are such good industry questions. Okay, now can you see my face and no longer the slides?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, ask the question one more time, Alice.
What are the best organizations, on the outside organizations, to get involved with and network with for your particular profession?
Okay. I love this question because I don't think there's one answer. And keep in mind that I'm only one professional, so you're only getting one opinion. But I think volunteering, I did not volunteer places aside from a bit in a preschool, and I wished I would have volunteered more often, and in preschools or in schools or at a hospital. Our volunteers at Miller Children's are the best. They're one of the best parts of my job, and I try to mentor them as best I can because I know they're literally volunteering their time to be there. So if you can get in with an organization where you can volunteer and you can get some mentoring by someone who's already in the field, I don't know that it matters exactly where you're volunteering. I think that you want to get yourself some mentors that are a good fit for you and that have some things in common with you and other things that aren't in common with you, so that you're really able to hone in on skills that you have, but be exposed to skills that you don't have yet.
Thank you. There are several other questions that came up, but they popped away and I can't see what they are. I think one of them, okay, how do you find clients if you're not affiliated with a hospital?
So if I were someone that was in a private practice, can I ask a question back? Does that mean I would be a speech language pathologist in a private practice?
Does that mean she would be a speech language in private practice? Yes, yes it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not a speech language pathologist in private practice, so you're about to get my my opinion based on zero experience. But when I worked in the school district and also working at Miller, a lot of our referrals come through the regional centers. So when children birth to 3, when the parents feel like, oh boy, there's something, maybe my child needs help in this area, they go straight to the regional center. But a lot of times that doesn't happen. They go to their pediatrician and the pediatricians give them a referral for speech and language, or the pediatrician says, maybe check out your local regional center. So if I was working in private practice, I think, I don't know if this is even possible, but I might try to create a relationship with the local regional center and let them know I would be a great vendor. And there's a lot of figuring out to do as far as billing and things like that. But and also pediatricians. Again, I don't know if that's allowed, but pediatricians are really the first line of who's seeing the children that eventually end up in schools or in our clinic.
Thank you. Can you let students and recent alumni know what are the best characteristics that best fit for your work? What kind of characteristics do you need to succeed in the job that you're doing?
I think you have to have good communication skills, which seems obvious because you're a speech language pathologist, so you're going to teach people to communicate. But I think even if you don't have the best skills right now, the willingness to work on those communication skills and collaborate. I think that most of what I know is actually from the brains of other people. So it's from the brains of my coworkers, from the psychologist or the neuropsychologist or the physical therapist or the special education teacher or the parent. So being willing to collaborate and find the answer when you don't know the answer, because I almost always do not know the answer.
Thank you. Would you recommend starting your career in a school or in a hospital setting, clinical setting?
Okay, best I know about this is a bit of a tricky question. I do believe that I'm a bit of a unique situation, someone who started in the schools and then was able to move into a medical setting. I think part of that has to do with I kept my contacts. So I have friends who from undergrad who I always kept in contact with, and they were good friends. And then they work at Miller, so I was coming in on a solid recommendation. So I think that's important. So again, that could happen for you through mentors or through your colleagues. I also think that in general, people don't move from the school to the medical setting because the skill set can be a bit different. And I have the most open-minded boss, and the leadership at Miller Children's is the best I've ever seen. And they know how to look at someone and see what skills they have to offer, and if that overall will be a good fit, regardless of where they came from. And so I'm thankful. So I think I'm a bit of a unique situation. So if you want to work medical, I would recommend that you try to be involved in medical settings. It only makes sense, right? And if you want to be in the schools, then you would try to be involved in a school setting because you want to get as much experience in the setting that you want to work in as possible. And then as an outlier, if you can get experience in other areas too, I think that's terrific. Makes you more well-rounded, and it will make you better at that setting that you're good at.
What is the outlook for your profession? Is it, are there more people that are needed, or is this a field that's up and coming and you need more people? What's the basic outlook?
So I haven't watched those numbers in the last 2 years, but I was watching them as a professional before that. And every year there have been enough jobs for everyone, as best I can tell. And speech language pathology assistants have been used generally safely, or I should say always safely. We're regulated by our national board, but they have been used under speech language pathologists when actual speech language pathologists aren't able to make contact and go into more of a supervisory role. So every time I have looked, there have always been jobs available. And there have also always been jobs in Southern California every time I've looked, which I think is a pretty big deal.
That's great. I just got a chat that said we have close to 100% placement. So let me ask you another question, and this came from the folks in the chat room. What are some of the most difficult issues you've worked with in terms of speech pathology?
Honestly, I have had a couple of times where caregivers, this was early on in my career, where I felt like caregivers just kind of weren't training. And so that's why I'm talking to you about that today, because I want to let you know that every caregiver I've ever worked with has ended up being a really terrific experience. But early on, I think I had really high expectations for what a caregiver would maybe be willing to do and wouldn't be willing to do. And so that was an issue early on in my career. And now I just feel like as a behavior analyst and a person, it's just a matter of motivation. And if you can get that patient where they're making a little bit of progress and you can explain that that progress is happening because of the caregiver, I haven't run into that issue again. When I was working in the school district, I did run into the issue where I didn't get to communicate with the parents quite as much as I wanted. And if I went back into the school district, I think I would communicate more often, probably through, you don't have infinite time. You are working very hard in the school district, but I would communicate more with the families through either email or send home sheets or something to make sure to try to try to gain more access to the caregivers as allies.
We have another question. Did your work in the school district, your work with the schools, help you in your work with the hospitals?
Yes. So I was seeing every hour in the school district, I was seeing 3 to 9 children. And now I see 1 to 6. So the school district, the school district trained me to be so efficient. And also I had help from one graduate student in particular that I had. She was terrific. She had a behavior background, and we were just trying to figure out how to make that 25 minutes the most efficient minutes of their day, taking data and progressing them step by step through curriculum. And so I owe a lot. I owe a lot of what I know now to that particular graduate student, and also to my work in the schools, because sometimes my job now feels it's not a walk in the park, but I mean, 1 child and 1 caregiver, like that's a dream, right? So I don't think I could do what I do now if I hadn't have worked in the schools. And when I came into Miller, I was able to take over the group programs pretty seamlessly because I knew how to manage a group.
That's great. Another question that came up, what is the range? What kinds of disorders are you actually working with?
So in the schools, you end up working with everything because you're the one speech therapist for that school. So collaboration could not be more important. And then if you know someone has a specialty that you don't have, sometimes it is possible to bring another specialist over with you so that you can give that student the best care. I don't think that's possible in all school districts, but I think ABC Unified is a stellar district to work for. And so you work with everything. So I'm trying to think of what I worked with in the schools in particular. So I worked with a lot of children that were on the spectrum. I worked with a couple of voice disorders. I worked with a fair amount of children who stuttered. I work with a lot of articulation disorders, right? A lot of like kind of sloshy S's, right? Or the R's that sounds like W, a lot of those, and a lot of language disorders in the schools. So a lot of times where kids just, can't think of that word, or they don't understand that concept, or they learn better if they have a variety of visuals and more repetition. Here at Miller, I am specializing in our early intervention, partly because I was able to do groups easily. So I'm specializing in 2-year-olds, and with the board certified behavior analyst, I'm kind of the team member that's like, yeah, sign me up. If that child also seems to have a little bit of, wild behaviors, I'm like, me, pick me. So I tend to err on the side if the child's more behavioral. That's a good fit for me. And I just did an eval for a boy with dysarthria. So that was yesterday. And then I have some children with cleft palate repairs coming onto my caseload. So voice disorders.
What's dysarthria, and what kind of voice disorders are you talking about? What does that exactly mean?
Okay, so voice disorders are someone that you might hear have like a hoarse or a scratchy voice. Sometimes it's just a matter of teaching them some hygiene techniques, like staying very hydrated, not yelling on the playground, or at siblings, tapping mom before you ask for something so you can speak in a quieter tone. Sometimes it's a lot of techniques. Sometimes we're teaching some compensatory strategies because maybe there was intubation earlier in life, and that caused some harm to the vocal folds. So those are some of the voice disorders we might come across. And then dysarthria is you have weakness or muscular paralysis, and that would affect someone's ability to speak clearly or use all the muscles of their face. And we work with that also.
Another question that came up was, did you take psychology classes, and are they helpful to you in the field of speech pathology?
So I think I only had to take Psychology 101 back in my undergrad days, but I am interested in psychology in that something kind of geeky about me is that I like to read manuscripts.
You just froze. Okay.
Oh.
You froze. So maybe you want to repeat what you said.
Okay. So I took one psychology course in my undergrad, and then I don't believe any other courses were required, but they are now, I believe, working into speech language pathology programs, a lot of counseling courses, which could not be more important for us because we do wear the hat of counselor quite often, mainly as listener, because everyone really needs a listening ear. But the voice disorders, those tend to be very emotional, and having a child diagnosed with just about anything, you yourself being diagnosed with something, it's all quite emotional. So I think psychology courses would be helpful. I don't know if many are required at this time, but counseling courses are growing, thankfully.
What advice do you have for working with children who were not brought into the session, 4th or 5th grade?
Not brought into the session.
So let me read this again. What advice do you have for conducting teletherapy group sessions for older children who may not be as bought into the session?
Ah, gotcha. So I would find out what they do like. I would buy-in is, what I was talking to you about. So it could not be more important. And I feel like I say that a lot, could not be more important. but you want to know what they like, and you want to try to gear it towards them as best you can. I know you're in a group, so that's not always possible. But for instance, Minecraft, I think 4th and 5th grade, you're probably playing something more Terraria or something more like that. But if they like Minecraft, maybe you can gear your lesson towards Minecraft, or maybe you can allow them to vote what the theme would be, or what activities they might like to do. Or I would probably work towards figuring out what would be reinforcing for them and try to work that into the session.
Okay. Look. There's another question that had 2 parts, and I'm only remembering the first part. What made you gravitate to what you're doing? And also, a panelist wants to know, can any of your listeners reach you online? So two parts there.
So why did I gravitate? I honestly feel like most people have very heartwarming stories about why they went into speech language pathology. And I truly, at the time, really wanted to be a professional dancer. And I had my mind set on being a professional dancer, but I felt like a bachelor's degree in dance wouldn't necessarily help me to get there. I knew everything, right? I was 20. So at 20, when I knew everything, I decided to get a bachelor's degree in speech language pathology, because I did really like to help people, and I did really like to work one-on-one, and I did really think that the brain and all of that was very interesting. So that's sort of how I picked it, frankly, and I am so happy that I picked it. And so then after my bachelor's degree, I went and I danced professionally for about 10 years. And then I decided it was about time to go back to school. And I went back to get my master's in speech language pathology, which I would not recommend after 10 years of not practicing in the field. It was rough, but I made it through, thankfully. And so I sort of picked it, and I don't know why I picked it, but I'm so happy that I did. And I think it is a good fit for me.
And why did you choose working with children?
Well, that's the funny thing about graduate school, is that, again, by that time, what was I, 30? And so I still knew everything. And so I was 30 and in graduate school, and I said to myself, whew, kids, I don't know kids. So I'm going to do adults in a medical setting. And then I did a pediatric setting, and I realized I didn't know what I was doing, but I really loved it. And then I started volunteering at a preschool, and that's the direction I went. And it was, again, a good fit. So you never know what's going to happen. Be ready for anything, and just assume you don't know everything.
That's great. Can people reach you online? People who are participating in the chat today, would they be able to reach you online, or do you want to give them a phone number, or
wow,
or do you not want to give them anything?
I'm ill prepared to answer this question. What could they I only have a personal email and a work email. Boy, this is a good question.
Or Stephanie, sorry to jump in, Alice. Are you on LinkedIn where they could follow you possibly?
I'm not on LinkedIn, but now I know what to do. My action item is to be on LinkedIn. So how about I get on LinkedIn? How long is that going to take me? A week? 1 week? Okay. I will be on LinkedIn by Wednesday, June 24th, and you can follow me on LinkedIn.
That's terrific. All questions will be answered. Are there other questions? Do we have some other questions? Who do you partner with in Miller's Hospital in your work?
One of my favorite things to do is to co-treat. Haven't done that since telehealth. but I really enjoyed co-treating with physical therapists, probably because I'm kind of a gross motor person, the dancer in me. Currently, I'm sitting on a pillow on the floor because it's the best position for me. And so I was a good fit to co-treat with physical therapists. And so physical therapists are probably my favorite, but I will say we have a wonderful neuropsychologist. And I also made a couple calls to her. And so then there's also a nurse practitioner. Whoever will partner with me, I will collaborate.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, here's one. With the changes from the pandemic, which may carry on into the future, how do you see things changing?
I see a lot more telehealth, which was originally not very common. I know that the VA has been doing it for a really long time. I sat in on a webinar and the panelists all had worked with veterans at veteran hospitals, and they've been doing telehealth for, I think they said 10 or 20 years. So it used to be if you didn't have access to face-to-face, maybe you lived in a remote area, that then you received telehealth. And now I just see more of us doing telehealth. I myself am very happy doing telehealth, and I'm hoping that I can do it for a while longer. It does save me commute time, and I don't have to, this is kind of, we have to sanitize everything we use, right, in between patients. And it's just me, so I don't have to sanitize anything. So I'm saving some time. Also finding new ways to be creative, which I think is fun.
That's great. Any other questions for Stephanie? Anybody else have a question?
Alice, there is one. What can you see as an improvement in technology and or process in this area?
Thanks, Ricky.
So right now on some sites like Boom Learning, I can give over control if you're on a laptop. I can give you control to click if you're on an iPad, but you can't click and drag. So we're finding as we're collaborating and trying to figure out some interactive things to do that depending on the device that you're on, that your patient is on, you might be limited. So I would love to see that change. I don't know enough about technology to know if I'm asking to, if I'm asking for the universe, right? But if it didn't matter what device you were on and whatever website I was using could be interactive, that would be dreamy and luxurious. But I also am not sure where we're at doing HIPAA compliant groups. And so that's something that would be wonderful if we could do groups online, but still adhere to HIPAA compliance, which may already be a possibility.
Would you be willing to collaborate with Cal State Long Beach in terms of technological advances and changes?
I would. I'm hesitant to say that I have something to offer, but then I'm thinking about that assistive technology piece of me that might be helpful. But absolutely, if you want to partner with me, I'm willing to collaborate. That's my new motto.
Okay, are there any other questions? I want to thank Stephanie. You've been terrific. Thank you so much for doing that. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And I want to turn it back to Noemi.
Thank you, Alice, and thank you, Stephanie. We're going to look for you on LinkedIn, and we will follow you. We're going to be your first friends on LinkedIn, and we'll network on the platform. Again, like Alice said, thank you, everyone, for joining us today. This session was recorded, and it will be live on our website in the next couple of days. So please look for the video and share it with fellow alumni and friends. And just a reminder to follow us on social media at CSULB Alumni to learn about future programs like this one. Thank you and have a great day.